Welcome to Super Nutrition Academy's Health Class with your host and registered holistic nutritionist, Yuri Elkaim. Tune in each week for up-to-date insights on breaking health news and best practices on how to eat for awesome health. It's time to get smarter, healthier, and regain your sanity in a world of information overload. And don't forget to join Yuri at supernutritionacademy.com so you too can master your nutrition and health.
Hey guys, Yuri Elkaim here with another episode of the Super Nutrition Academy Health Class. I'm really excited to have with me in this interview a dear friend of mine, Jeffrey Smith. And if that name rings a bell, it's probably because you've probably heard some of the amazing things he's doing in the world of GMO activism and getting consumers and big corporations aware of what's happening with genetically modified foods. It's such an important message, and we're going to kind of dive into that in this interview. Just to give you a little background on Jeffrey, he is the leading consumer advocate when it comes to promoting healthier non-GMO choices, and he's the author of the world's best-selling and number one rated book on the topic, which is called Seeds of Deception, which is, again, if you're interested in GMOs, Jeffrey is the guy you want to follow. And if you have a TV, which I'm sure you do, and if you have access to, is it on, well, I guess I'll ask him in a second, but it's a great movie called Genetic Roulette. And Jeffrey, welcome to the call. Welcome to the interview.
Thank you.
Awesome. And just quickly, is Genetic Roulette, is it available on iTunes, Netflix, or?
It's supposed to be soon. We have a person working on that. In the meantime, it's available on Amazon. It's available at geneticroulettemovie.com. And it's available by DVD, and you get a bonus DVD if you buy it from Genetic Roulette Movie.
Awesome. So everyone listening, this is a topic area that is really controversial, at least when it comes to the political forces involved. But what Jeffrey's been able to do is really create a movement of awareness and amazing education. So why don't we jump right into this? And I guess what was your impetus for getting involved in GMOs?
Well, I actually got inspired by a genetic engineer. He is an expert at DNA, swapping genes between species, DNA research, etc. And in 1996, I attended a lecture where he was alarmed that they were about to put this immature, accident-prone science into crops that we were going to eat and release outdoors, and they were going to become part of the background noise, a contaminated gene pool. So there was a technology that was going to simultaneously impact, potentially very negatively, everyone who eats, but also the entire ecosystem, meaning all living things, and because it's a self-propagating pollution of the gene pool, all future generations. So we had never had this type of technology before in the history of the world, and I realized that it was being introduced in a stealth manner. Almost no one knew about it. And I figured the scientists needed some help to get the word out, so I started to translate the science into English. And then later I worked at a GMO detection laboratory, and then I wrote a book, and now I've been to 37 countries, and it's all that I do.
That's awesome. So, I mean, you've been on BBC, NPR, Dr. Oz, and you talked about how you're taking what the scientists are doing and bringing it to the kind of a mass awareness. What do people need to know about the dangers of GMOs? I mean, the bill was shot down in California, a little while ago, which is unfortunate. Why? Okay, before we get into the political stuff, why are GMOs dangerous for human health?
All right. Well, the genetically modified organisms, you take genes from one species and force it into the DNA of other species. The FDA scientists were of an absolute consensus that the technology itself was dangerous, that it could create allergens, toxins, new diseases, and nutritional problems. They repeatedly warned their superiors to require testing. They were ignored. The FDA had been told by the White House in 1991 and 92 to promote biotechnology by the George Bush White House, and they created a new position specifically for Michael Taylor. Michael Taylor was Monsanto's former attorney. Monsanto's the big GMO company. His policy that he oversaw ignored the scientists' warnings, denied even the existence of the warnings of the scientists, saying, we don't see any difference between GMOs and non-GMOs. and then on that basis said absolutely no testing is necessary, no labeling is necessary. Companies like Monsanto, who told us that PCBs, Agent Orange, and DDT were safe, they can determine on their own, and they'll get it right this time, we promise, that GMOs are safe and put it on the market without even telling the FDA or consumers. Now, their concerns at the FDA have been validated since. The American Academy of Environmental Medicine, for example, reviewed animal feeding studies 4 years ago, and at that point said there's so much damage to these rodents that have been fed GMOs in labs, gastrointestinal disorders, reproductive disorders, immune problems, accelerated aging, organ damage, insulin and cholesterol problems. They said every doctor should prescribe non-GMO diets to everyone. In the meantime, the government should simply remove the GMOs and put in a moratorium. The government ignored them. But the doctors did not. Now, thousands of doctors are prescribing non-GMO diets, and the people are reporting getting better from the same diseases that were afflicting the lab animals. And when livestock are taken off of GMOs, they're getting better from the same disorders. And when pets are taken off, they're getting better from these same disorders, which are on the rise in the U.S. population since GMOs were introduced, and which would be predicted if you simply look at the characteristics of the poisons that end up in the GMOs. So when I interview audiences, and typically we have people in the audience, lots of people in the audience who get better from gastrointestinal problems of all types, allergies, asthma, skin problems, brain fog, weight problems, diabetes, infertility, liver problems, anxiety, depression, aggression, impulsiveness, autism, all these things. And I can sit with scientists like I did today. I interviewed a biochemist who went into the details of what could be going wrong with GMOs, and it would predict these type of disorders.
Huh. So we're essentially playing Jurassic Park with our food supply, pretty much.
Yeah, that's a technical term.
So I guess the idea with GMOs is to get better yields out of crops, make them more resistant to frost or different diseases, so that farmers and companies are able to get more out of their input, I guess. Is that the idea?
Sort of. Actually, GMOs reduce yield. It's a little-known secret outside those of us who study it in detail, but GMOs do not increase yield. They were told over and over again by the biotech hype that it's needed to feed the world, but the experts at Feeding the World not only recognize that GMOs don't increase yield, they realize that it takes money away from the more appropriate technologies that do increase yield, that are sustainable, and that are appropriate for developing countries. And we have now two main types of GMOs. The GMOs that can be sprayed with a weed killer that would normally kill natural plants, but they're not killing the GMOs because of the inserted bacterial gene. Mm-hmm. So Roundup Ready soybeans can be sprayed with Roundup. Liberty Link corn can be sprayed with Liberty. And then you have corn and cotton plants that can also produce their own toxic insecticide, which breaks open the stomach of insects to kill them. In both cases, we eat the toxin. So we eat the toxin in the corn that can poke holes in cells. We eat the weed killer that's absorbed into the herbicide-tolerant crops. And we can analyze those, and it's actually horrific what we find.
So I just had corn on the cob for dinner. How do I know?
My condolences.
Yeah, exactly. But we got them from a local farmer. How do we know, or how does the consumer know, even if they're buying locally from a farmer's market or a local farmer around their neighborhood, how do we know whether something is GMO'd or not? And do the farmers even know?
Well, they'll know for corn because they'll have to sign contracts if they buy Monsanto sweet corn, for example, and they'll know that it's designed to be sprayed with Roundup, mm-hmm. and it produces a Bt toxin. So it's a double whammy. In fact, it's a triple whammy because it's not processed at all. So all of the risks are right there, right in front of you. You don't get, like with high fructose corn syrup or things where there's no DNA or protein left, the risk is quite a bit less. But if you eat raw corn that's been sprayed with Roundup and it's producing Bt toxin, you can end up with some serious issues.
Yeah.
And we could talk about studies done in Canada, where you are, that showed the Bt toxin ended up in the blood of people and in the unborn fetuses in pregnant women. And other studies show that it can poke holes in human cells. And you put those together, and it could spell catastrophe. It can spell leaky gut, intestinal, which is the permeability in the gut walls. It can lead to inflammation of the gut walls, autoimmune disease, immune system problems, maybe even cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and autism. So, but your question is how to avoid this stuff. If you're a corn farmer, you'll generally know if it's GMO, so you should ask the farmer whether it was genetically engineered or not. And if it's not, then you still have the question, is it downwind from a GMO field? And did it tassel at the time that the other one was pollinating? So you may end up, getting cross-contaminated corn. So a small percentage of the kernels that you're eating on the same cob may be genetically engineered. It won't be sprayed with Roundup if it's downwind unless there's drift. So you can buy organic, and that means that they're trying to not allow for contamination, but some contamination does occur. If you're eating zucchini or yellow squash, that might be genetically engineered, and even the grower may not know in that case.
What are the within the produce world? What are the most genetically modified foods that we should avoid?
Well, we just said 3 out of 4 of them. The zucchini, yellow squash, corn, and papaya. And it's only papaya from Hawaii or China. There's also, edamame, which is soy, but really there's only 9 GM food crops. But unfortunately, the 5 or 6 of them are practically omnipresent in processed foods and animal feed. So we have soy, corn, cottonseed oil, canola oil, sugar from sugar beets, alfalfa used as hay, and we mentioned we have papaya, zucchini, and yellow squash.
So when people pick up a box or packaged food and they see canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil, we can assume that as probably coming from a GMO plant at some level.
Well, if it's made in the U.S. or Canada, yes, because 90 to 95% of the canola is GMO, and when they crush it into oil, they don't segregate it unless it's a specific plant that segregates it on purpose. And if you're going to go to the trouble of segregating, you're going to brag and boast about it. So it's going to say non-GMO on it, or it's going to say organic if that's the case. Same thing with soy and corn. 93% of the soy, 88% of the corn, 94% of the cotton. So all of those cottonseed oils and whatnot, they're going to be GMO if made in North America.
What about, is wheat on that list at all, or is wheat kind of a different kind of hybridized issue?
Yeah, wheat is not genetically engineered at this point. I mean, Monsanto wants to GMO everything. In fact, their stated goal was to genetically engineer 100% of all commercial seeds in the world within 15 to 20 years, essentially replace nature with designer genes designed for greater profit and control. So this is something that would be a catastrophe of unparalleled proportions, to take the products of the billions of years of evolution and replace it with new organisms with a science that's known to create side effects and no way to clean up the gene pool.
So I just shot a video today about how disgusted I was with TED Talks in response to their recent banning, if you want to, for lack of a better term, of any topics related to GMOs, vaccinations, pseudoscience, as they call it. I find it ridiculously irresponsible on their part to not even consider GMOs as something that's scientifically validated. What are your points of view on this?
We should create an alternate to TED. I mean, it's like it's a corrupted organization, but we see that is the norm these days. You look at the Royal Society in London. You look at the regulatory agencies around the world. You look at so many areas, and I've been studying this for 17 years, because if you're looking seriously at the geopolitics of genetic engineering, you realize that Monsanto has embedded themselves. I've been to 37 countries, and I see them everywhere. So we have a situation when independent scientists actually speak on GMOs properly or discover problems. They're pounced upon. They're threatened. They're fired. They're denied tenure, denied funding, gagged. And this happens over and over again. In some cases, physically assaulted. And we've documented this, and we interview them. And it has been an incredible suppression on the research. So there's hardly anyone that wants to do research on GMOs because they don't want to risk their career. If they want to, they can't get the seeds because they're patented and the companies have control. If they somehow get the seeds, it's very hard to get funding. If they get the funding, you can't publish it in the United States because of the ties to the biotech industry. If you publish it overseas, you risk losing all future funding. And you certainly will get a barrage of personal attacks that, according to Nature magazine or Nature journal, is not helpful to science, as we know.
So we're kind of up against it, and so is the kind of the scientists who are interested in looking at this stuff. You brought up a really good point at the events where we were at a little while ago, where you said it really comes down to there's going to be a critical mass where consumers are simply going to be demanding GMOs to such a non-GMO foods to such a degree where corporations are going to be forced to basically eliminate GMOs from their foods. Otherwise, they're just not going to keep up with market share. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'll do it in the form of a story, which is interesting. We talked about Monsanto's plans to genetically engineer 100% of the seeds. This was revealed by their consultant, Arthur Anderson, in a San Francisco 1999 January conference. At the same conference, another company projected that within 5 years, by 2004, 95% of all commercial seeds would be genetically engineered. They did not anticipate the lifting of a gag order on a scientist who discovered problems with GMOs, was fired from his job after 35 years, silenced with threats of a lawsuit, maligned in the press, lied about. The UK government actually targeted him to discredit and disinform the population about his research, but the UK Parliament lifted his gag order. He was able to speak on February 16th, and within a month, more than 700 articles on GMOs were circulating in the UK press. Within 10 weeks of the gag order being lifted, a tipping point of consumer rejection, the critical mass, had been achieved. So many Europeans said no to GMOs that the Nestle's and Unilever and then everyone said, okay, no more GMOs in Europe. So McDonald's doesn't serve them there, Burger King doesn't serve them there, and they serve them here. Now, that tipping point here should not require a vote. It doesn't require 51% of Americans to stop eating a product before the manager is going to say, well, we lost half our market share, it's time to switch. Because there's no consumer benefits to GMOs. If there is if there's a backlash against them, then they're going to get rid of them. And we're starting to see that now. This is what we've been engineering at the Institute for Responsible Technology. So we are genetic engineers of a different type. We're engineering a revolt against GMOs through education, telling people the truth. And the movie Genetic Roulette changes people's diet instantly. And we've been talking about this for, I've been working on it for 17 years. Now we're not only the early stages of the tipping point, but we've actually tipped it in the natural food industry. And the next stage, which is battle for market share in Safeway and Walmart, that'll determine whether we have an immediate tipping point in the United States and Canada. And that's coming up very soon because we know that in the health food sector, Whole Foods president said that when a product becomes non-GMO project verified, it increases sales by 15 to 30%. Yeah. We don't know what will happen when a product is labeled as non-GMO project verified in Walmart and Safeway and Loblaws and all that, but we're about to find out because it's going to happen very soon. And if we tip the scales there, the food companies are going to say, we don't want to be second to market with a non-GMO label because we saw what happened to this other brand.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of food companies, as my listeners and followers know, and it's unfortunate that a lot of the food companies really don't give a crap about our health. It's all about whatever is going to impact their bottom line. And in this case, it's not about switching to non-GMO foods because of the health benefit. It's about the fact that they're going to negatively be affected if they don't, which is, it's sad, but I guess if that's what it takes, then, that's what it takes, right?
Well, that's what it takes, unfortunately, because right now the federal government is in the pocket of Monsanto. I mean, for example, that guy that was in charge of GMO policy that allowed it on the market without testing, Michael Taylor, after then becoming the chief lobbyist for Monsanto, Obama put him back at the FDA as the U.S. food czar. The biotech governor of the year from Iowa became the Secretary of Agriculture. The person who was at the lobbying organization for the biotech industry became the chief negotiator for agriculture in the United States. for international treaties. We have a situation where, if you look at WikiLeaks, the entire State Department is deployed on behalf of the biotech industry. So we have a situation where we have to rely on the market, but fortunately the market is the most stable response to this. I mean, if you think about politics, I was flown to Poland by the government and gave a press conference with the Polish Minister of Environment about GMOs. A week later, he was no longer the environment minister because they lost that vote. I was in Thailand lobbying the ministers there to prevent outdoor release of GMO field trials. We were successful until the following week, and they got a new government. So a political situation or solution is always unstable, but GMOs have stayed out of the food industry in Europe, the direct derivatives, not animal feed, since they were kicked out in 1999. So we also kicked out collectively bovine growth hormone out of Walmart and Starbucks and Yoplait and Dannon and most American dairies because the milk has higher concentrations of a cancer-promoting hormone called IGF-1. It's so high that Monsanto's scientists were told by a former Monsanto scientist refused to drink milk after they saw the levels unless it was organic. One bought his own cow. So by presenting, I know it's crazy, by presenting this information to consumers, we're at the top of the food chain. And in this case, it doesn't take a lot. So it's really weird here. You know, we're talking about one of the most dangerous technologies in the history of the earth because it can affect all living beings and all future generations, outlasting the effects of global warming, outlasting nuclear waste. The only thing that has a longer life than genetic pollution is extinction. And yet it may come down to whether one product on the shelves of the supermarkets increases sales and the product leader decreases sales, and that little, almost ridiculous thing could protect all living beings and all future generations.
It's amazing. So the power really is within our hands, which is nice. It's empowering that we can make a difference. So with that said, what are some everyday tips that regular people can implement into their lives to kind of move the needle in the right direction, but also ensure that they're not consuming GMOs?
All right, let's talk about the avoiding GMOs, and then we'll talk about the activist piece. Non-GMOshoppingguide.com is our website that helps people navigate. We have over 10,000 products that have been verified by another organization, the Non-GMO Project. And we have the tips by organic, by products that are labeled non-GMO, by products listed in the shopping guide, or avoid the at-risk ingredients. And we list them all the derivatives of soy, the derivatives of corn, etc. Also, aspartame comes from a GMO microorganism. Then we also have an iPhone application, Shop No GMO. You can just download that. Now, as far as activism goes, knowledge has organizing power. So I'm going to give some specific tools to everyone so that they can become more aware and to share these points. You talked about the movie Genetic Roulette. That's at geneticroulettemovie.com. It's by far and away the most potent and quickest transformation experience. We've done pre and post tests. We've asked people to rate themselves and their vigilance of avoiding GMOs before and then after the film, how active they are at talking about GMOs before and after the film. It moves the needle like nothing else. So that's the main thing. But we also have a newsletter, which is available at responsibletechnology.org. It's called Spilling the Beans. People can share that and post it. We have a speaker training for those who like to speak or who are speaking on other topics already. That's also available on that site at responsibletechnology.org. We have a network of activism called the Tipping Point Network. You know where that's going. Mm-hmm. And we have over 10,000 people with over 117 groups in North America, mostly in the United States. And we also have a plan to approach specific demographics, which we've already started: moms, pet owners, healthcare professionals, certain groups of sick people who are suffering from problems related to GMOs, in our opinion, as well as certain religious groups that think GMO means God move over. And we have opportunities for people to plug into that. We have on October 25th to 27th this year, 2013, we have a Gmo Mini Summit where John Robbins and I will be interviewing some of the top experts and activists in the world on this field, all completely free online. There's a march against Monsanto on October 12th. We have some surprises we're going to share with only of our subscriber list this month, which is in October, which is Non-Gmo month. So we really want people to subscribe so that we can, let people know when there's a petition to be signed, when there's someone to call, and when there's a need to do something special to tip the balance. And so we would invite people to that community that we've created, and we can work together and are already massively successful. I mean, non-GMO labeled products, Yuri, in 2012 were the fastest growing group of foods in the United States.
That's amazing.
And so we have been hugely successful through our education programs. Target is taking GMOs out of its home brand next year. Ben & Jerry's by next year. Chipotle's restaurants by next year. So we are moving the needle already, and I think it's, we are expecting to win this, and we're expecting to win it soon, but we need help.
That's awesome. Yeah, so, I mean, everyone listening to this, responsibletechnology.org, sign up for Jeffrey's newsletter. It's awesome. If this is something that is a passion of yours or something you think you need to be involved in, even if it's within your household at some level, this is information you need to know about. This is information you need to pass on to your kids, your friends, and just with that, like Jeffrey said, like with education comes, this mass kind of movement in the right direction.
And you said kids, Yuri, and kids are really most at risk. And what I'm hearing from pediatricians is there's a whole new set of very complicated disorders, often immune and digestionally related. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these pediatricians realize or believe that GMOs are a primary driver of that, and removal of GMOs is key. Yeah. And I have heard testimonials. I've heard more testimonials than anyone in the world from parents that have removed GMOs from their kids' diet, or people that have removed GMOs from their own diet. And I'll give you one or two. In MIT, someone in the audience said their kid was 6.5-year-old son was out of control. He was violent. They wanted to kick him out of school. She saw the film Genetic Roulette, changed his diet immediately. Within a month, she said she had a new son. All the problems disappeared. I had a mother come up to me in Orange County, California. She just broke down crying, saying thank you for saving my children. And I went out and met those children, and I've seen pictures of them before and after. They had really serious allergic reactions, taking them out of school for weeks, got rid of GMOs, and their whole reactivity had gone down to a fraction of where it had been. I hear this parents of autistic kids take the kids off of the GMOs and report improvements. So we are tracking this. We're working with a lot of doctors now to gather these type of testimonials, and people can send it to us at healthy@responsibletechnology.org. And we're getting parents about their kids, pet owners about their pets or horses, farmers and veterinarians about their livestock, dramatic changes in livestock within 2 or 3 days. So we're very confident, especially because of the livestock. When humans get rid of GMOs because they're not labeled in the U.S., unlike 64 other countries, then people have to either buy organic or switch to less processed foods. So there's cofactors that might help explain why someone is getting better. Maybe it's not the GMO that's causing the problem. Maybe it's the other toxic chemicals that are found in non-organic foods. Maybe it's the additives found in processed foods. But when pigs or cows remove GMOs from their diet by the veterinarians and the farmers, all they're doing is switching to non-GM versions of the same species.
And there's no placebo there.
No placebo, right. It's not like you don't have to sit with the cow and, consult with them. And there's no cofactors. You don't have gluten-free pigs or dairy-free cows or raw, all of a sudden they don't become vegans and raw. So, so you end up having stories like diarrhea disappearing in 2 days in a Danish pig farm, a drop of 75% in medicinal treatments immediately on an Iowa farm, a drop in death rates in pneumonia on a 5,000 head cattle feeding lot operation. Probably the most compelling story in Genetic Roulette was in South Africa, where this farmer had terrible health problems with his cows and pigs, and based on a recommendation by a veterinarian, he took out the GM corn. They all got better, ran out of the non-GM corn, bought the corn from the market. They all got worse, was able to secure a full, complete year's worth of non-GM corn. They all got better. But what was most compelling was the fact that in South Africa, the farm workers eat most of their caloric intake as corn. So it's eaten for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they were eating the same corn that the animals were. And before they were fed the non-GM corn, they were dying 1 or 2 a week. And these are 60 farm workers. They were dying, no, 1 or 2 a month were dying, according to the report. They were suffering from inflammatory disease, flu-like symptoms, severe headaches. They had no idea why. But when they switched to non-GM corn, the problems disappeared. And when they ran out and had to go back to GM corn, the problems reappeared until the non-GM corn was finally secured. So this is a group of people who are eating more GMOs than anyone else in the world. They're unfortunately our canaries in the coal mine. They're our guinea pigs, and it's horrific what's happened to them, but it's very, very telling.
Wow. So this has been very, very enlightening. It's been a fire hose of inspiration and information. And I think in terms of immediate action, that website you suggested earlier for finding out the best foods to avoid or choose was Non-GMO Shopping or
Non-GMO Shopping Guide.
Yeah.
.com,
okay.
or the iPhone application Shop No GMO.
Shop No GMO or non-gmoshoppingguide.com. Awesome.
Right.
I think if our listeners start with that and get a better sense of what foods they can avoid, and then start just to let this seed kind of percolate and start moving towards these better decisions, I think that's a huge first step. So Jeff, I mean, this has been an honor. I mean, thank you so much. I mean, the stuff you're doing is incredible, and I'm completely positive that what you are doing is going to transform this planet in a good way. So I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart, as someone who really cares about the health of this planet and its inhabitants, for the work that you're doing. It really is amazing.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. So again, everyone, he's mentioned a number of websites throughout the call, so go back through it so you can read the transcript, get those URLs, check it out, subscribe to his newsletter at responsibletechnology.org. And stay tuned for more amazing stuff that's coming down the pipes with non-GMO foods. So thank you so much, Jeffrey. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Safe eating.
Awesome. You too. Thank you very much.